Well, here we are at the wonderful Espacio Gallery where I've got my exhibition. So let's go in and have a look. So here we have at the beginning of the exhibition a cartoon that was done by my dad in about 1924. He would have been about 13 or 14. He wanted to be an artist himself but never had the opportunity. So I kind of feel I'm doing this for him in some respects. So this is the plan of where things are. So Bideford on that side, Brighton on this side, and London down below. So let's look at the Bideford stuff first, which starts on this wall here. Okay, so this section we've called early abstraction. So we've got images which were done really when I was about 16, 17, and really they're just exercises in paint and colour and tone. What I like about them is that they are really only exercises, but being that, they sort of become works of art as well, because they're not trying to be art. So that's what I really like about them. So this is all the blurb about Bideford, and here we have some perspective. This is a drawing to Helen Back, which is showing different ways of using perspective, a little stick figure there, which gives you a sense of scale. Almost like a train station in section. Then that moves on to this perspective charcoal drawing of one of the streets in Bideford town where I grew up. Moving along to the holly being used for analysing shape. So we have holly as a shape, which we're using various techniques to show how to create almost like a three-dimensional image. And then we go on to a more two-dimensional idea of holly and this painting. Then we have a very detailed drawing of woodbark. And then nature continues here with a flower, almost a bee's eye view of a flower, and an eroding rock. Okay, so let's move on round, and that will take us into line drawings, and taking a line for a walk, which is a phrase by Paul Craig. So we've got moving dog, and we have people, birds, more people, dogs, people, and my old art teacher Mike Mayer, who was also a clarinetist for his band, the Valkyrie Jazz Band. We went there on Friday nights to enjoy all of that. Star of the show here is our Nan, and this is a drawing I did when she was visiting from London. And moving around, we've got life drawings and portraits. So we did drawings in the studio with various models, male and female, and then did this painting and the figure here of a woman which I particularly like. And a woman on a chair here. moving around the green-eyed monster, which I don't know who that was, but this thing's rather spooky. And then we go around to self-portraits. This is rather dark because my portrait is just there in the mirror, looking down on this elderly man on a mattress. And I feel it's almost a little bit like me as a young man looking at myself as an older man, which I find kind of quite unsettling. And then we have some etchings. And this brightly coloured Fauvist type portrait. Okay, so let's look at the Brighton section, which starts way up here. So Brighton, the most intense years, we call this section. Okay, so we start with the sea, and my interpretation of the sea with breaking waves, long before I knew about Hokusai's The Grey Wave. I did that in Brighton, waves breaking on the pier. I was fascinated by the whole thing of the water breaking up into its parts and the energy within it. Then we have that expressed in this picture of a drowning man. It has the energy of red and yellow and various colours, so it's kind of quite a different sort of interpretation of the sea from that one. Then we have Jane Morris, who I was rather obsessed by. This painting is Egg Temper on card, and I did this painting based on a very famous photograph that was commissioned by Rossetti. So this painting actually has a story in that my father discovered it rather neglected in the attic, decided to frame it, and unfortunately the frame didn't fit properly, so he took a chunk off the right-hand side, which I was a bit annoyed about. But I kind of love it in a way because it was framed with parental affection. So this is Jane Morris as a series of photo etchings in different colours, as obviously very influenced by Andy Warhol and his prints of Marilyn Monroe with the same sort of style. So I obviously wanted to change the muse, if you like, and do Jane Morris in the similar sort of fashion. So this is the first time it's actually ever been seen like this. It's the first time we presented it to anybody. Anyway, so these were a couple of illustrations for the Günter Grass novel, The Tin Drum. The first one is the conception of Oscar under the skirts of the woman in the potato field. Here's Oscar with his tin drum banging away. And then this is the last chapter. So this is Oscar as an elderly man who's never grown up in his hospital bed, and his writing has been taken out by the nurse. And in the background you see the portrait of Hitler, just to remind ourselves of the era that this represents. Then we're on to The Dream, which is a big painting I did. We don't have, unfortunately. I actually sold it to a student from the University of Sussex when I was in Brighton. And so that's just a reference picture of the original painting, which was 8x4, very big. And the inspiration for all these works here. So this is a lithograph, a zinc plate lithograph of that image, but it's kind of reversed round because it's a print. And you see the two figures and the woman on the hearse behind, much more abstracted from the original painting. And then that takes us down to more abstractly these etchings, which are another interpretation of the same image of a man and a woman. So the image is breaking up a lot more. It's the right way around this time. I obviously kind of realised that by doing the lithograph I was switching the perspective around. And then the last one in this series is even more abstracted, so you can barely interpret what the imagery means, but you still see the couple and the woman on the hearse in the background. So with these, we're getting into the subconscious and the mind, and so the last picture in this gallery is very much a stream of consciousness image, almost like a mega doodle. I've called it Escape the Underworld, because you can see, amongst all these extraordinary characters, little stick man who's climbing up through the fissure in the rock to escape. And that's a rather amazing image, which I've mirrored down below when we see the last picture in the exhibition. So before we go downstairs, we can have a look at the book. Oh, it's opened up on the dream as it happens, so we can see the dream painting and the dream images, stream of consciousness, where we've just been, other drawings of the same thing. So all the stuff that we're going to see downstairs is in the book. So yeah, let's go to London. So here on the staircase we've got a few pictures. This is one that is called Exercise in Paint Application, the title which was rather amusing to Richard Cork when he was here. And then we've got this portrait of a sleeping woman, rather large portrait, which is kind of quite interesting. And then spinning around, we've got this mural, which I did at Brighton. It's an annex to a building there, and it will no doubt be destroyed by now, I'm pretty sure. So now we go downstairs to the lower gallery. I had the instruction there to start at the far end, which is what we're going to do. So really it's from my Royal College of Art times to now. So here there's a link really from Brighton to London, because this one was done in Brighton during a lecture, and it just so turned out that the portrait seemed to be of Francis Bacon, and so I called it Martyrdom of Francis Bacon. Leading on from that was this rather macabre picture of the birth of Pegasus, and he was born from the throat of Medusa, who had snakes as hair, so it's quite a dark image. That drawing is done at the same time. And on the other side, we've got pictures that I did really during the summers when I was in Sweden. I spent several summers in Sweden, wonderful friends there. So this is more a kind of overt erotica. And this Delos, the island of Delos, is the idea of the phallus on the temple there as an iconic image. That's leading to thalidomide. Thalidomide was a drug that was given to women for morning sickness, but it led to a lot of deformities with the children who were born. So I think I must have been particularly incensed by that whole thing of Big Pharma and what have you. Anyway, that develops into Rapunzel. They were done a lot later, taking the story of Rapunzel, but looking at it as much more as an erotic narrative, which people often think as a sort of children's fairy tale, but it actually has more darker erotic meaning. So we've got 4 drawings which were done either in pencil or pen, and then they were turned into these coloured versions by taking scans and colouring them with either pencils or inks. In this case, even sort of some gold paint. So these are really looking at myths and legends and seeing the kind of the darker and erotic elements to those stories. So we have another story over here, which is the mermaid story, and very much influenced by Japanese woodblock prints, and in particular the narrative anyway, Hokusai and the Dream of the Fisherman's Wife. In this case, it's a mermaid, which is a little bit different. We have the mermaid rescuing the sailor from the depths of the ocean, and that develops along here into the relationship between the mermaid and the octopus. Then I was playing around with making the image a lot darker, wanted to make it much more obscured under the water, and again under the water here. Then these other ones, also found images, collage, the same idea. This one's a collage, actually based on a photograph I took of a young couple, and in this one I've replaced the man with the octopus. So he's embracing the woman with his many arms. and that's more developed with coloured pencils. Moving on to Bali, these were done 2011-12. These drawings were of a young woman called Anis. She signed her name on the drawings. I hadn't done life drawing for about 40 years, so I was amazed that I could still do it. And I used those drawings as the basis of these two paintings, which is Anis and the Garuda and the Naga. The Garuda and the Naga are from Indonesian mythology. Well, this is another one I did, but with a different model. And these actually were in the Bali film that I made. Actually, at the moment, this is playing the sequence of Bali Visions, which has an interpretation of the story. You can see the paintings being developed and turned into artworks, and also in the context of dance and music and all wonderful, Bali elements. And that's Anis. And then you'll see we'll go back to the original drawing and the protective monster. And there we have the Garuda backstage. So from the booth, we've got more Bali. This one develops into a much more simple, more abstract version of a reclining woman. These are male dancers, or same male dancer, with very expressive line drawing. And this is the portrait of a young woman. This isn't actually in the book. We have a different portrait of the same woman in the book. From Bali, we go to Japan. Okay, so in Japan we start off with these images, which are overlaid. The shunga, which is the erotic art of Japanese prints, overlaid with some contemporary erotica. That then develops into this, which is based on a kunioshi shunga. This was coloured in watercolour. This was developed a bit further, creasing the paper. The colours very much washed out. I literally washed the painting and washed off all the surface paint, so you just have the residual stain, if you like, of the paint. Just crumpled the paper and flattened it out, and then put a lightning strike on some of the paper creases. Then we have India. I went to India on a merchant ivory film. We stayed in this amazing palace in Jodhpur, and I had my own room in this turret. That letter was to my parents. This drawing I did in Goa on another year of Shiva and Parvati and their attendant animals. And so I combined the two of them to create these two images. This one with my room there, and a young lion, a cow, an elephant. And that has developed a little bit more into that. So Shiva and Parvati have now got their halos. And yeah, so that's really my interpretation of an Indian miniature. I love Indian miniatures. So that takes us on to the area here. We've got Angel of the Volcano, two different women. You can't see who they are. And the erupting volcano in the background and the fleeing vehicles in both of them. Don't really know what it means, but there you have it. This is Jenny, who I was with in the 70s for some years, and a photograph and a drawing I did of her. Here we have Leda and the Swan, which is a Greek myth. The first one is a drawing, and I printed it and overlaid the same image the opposite way round, so you have this almost like an Escher type thing going on, which was interesting. And then I used the main image though for doing this picture here, in which you can see Zeus as the swan seducing Leda. And this is a different composition of the same narrative. So this here, we have a wall, which is a family wall. I did Christmas cards for various people here. So this is me as a snowman going to Bali, melting away. And this is the Brexmas card, snowman contemplating leaving Europe. These are a set of cartoon cards I did for family. My sister and brother-in-law, their two children, Kerry and Janice, their children, Emma, Lucy, Matthew and Sally. So yeah, that's a sort of family thing. And then over here we have paintings I very much did with my father in mind. Just after he died, I went to Greece with my partner at the time, Diane, and her boys. And it was really a way to sort of express my grief, if you like, of losing my father, doing some paintings which were very much the sort of thing that he would have liked. So that these are very much family too, all explained in the book. So we're now into the final section, which is very much based around the pandemic. At the time, Camille was living in my spare room, and we had a lot of time together, and we started to develop a narrative very much similar to what maybe Rossetti would have done with Jane Morris. So this is a Corona tray that we did. It's taking an image of her, superimposing it onto the Corona beer tray. And then we did other pictures, other photographs, and this cup here has the two images that become this picture here, where you can see Proserpine emerging from the underworld, leaving her ghostly image behind. She's coming up from beneath the carpet in my living room, which I think is kind of quite strange. My favourite carpet is Persian carpet. And this one, she's coming up out of a book on Botticelli. It's an Andy Warhol image of Botticelli, and then she's emerging from that background. And finally, we have this image, which is Proserpine and a pomegranate dreaming of leaving the underworld. And the underworld background that we have is actually the image that we have on the same column upstairs. So that then comes down here to form the background to this image of Camille as Proserpine. And that really is the end of our tour. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming. This is such a huge event for me. My first exhibition ever. So really what you're seeing here is the culmination of a lifelong dream, if you like. When I was a very young man, I had this fantasy of being an artist and exhibiting and showing my work to people. My film career, which is about 50 years, is wonderful, but this work as an artist is like slightly different, a bit more personal, a bit more meaningful for me. This very much is dedicated to my father. He was a wonderful man who suffered terribly at the end of his life with Alzheimer's. The book is for sale, and all proceeds go to the Alzheimer's research. It's enormously satisfying for me to be able to show my work to you. So thank you.
Thank you.